So growing up, I wanted to make a difference. My father would watch the news every night, and I would see often the UN peacekeepers with their blue berets on, trying to do good things around the world, and I thought, that's going to be me. I'm going to leave my life in Perth, Western Australia, and go out to the world and make a difference. So I joined the military at 17. That's what I was going to do. That was my path to be a peacekeeper, to make a difference. And I thought, cool, I'll get a free degree, bit of adventure, leave Perth, it's going to be fantastic. And I went off to officer training, did my 6 months of officer training, walked around the parade ground, polished my boots. I held a rifle once and thought, okay, interesting. And they said, put that back down, back to marching, back to polishing your boots. I did this for 6 months. And towards the end of that course, two guys walked up to me and they had berets on, but they weren't blue berets, they were black berets. And they said, Aaron, we've been watching you, we want you to come with us. We want you to be a diver in the Australian Navy, a Navy SEAL. I said, cool, all right, are you sure you've got the right guy? And they said, yep, no, we've been watching you, come with us. So 85 young officers were on my course, and 2 of us were selected to go to Navy diving course. So the goal of the Navy diving course is to destroy us, absolutely destroy us, spiritually, physically, emotionally, to see who is tough enough to be a Navy diver. And I started the course and there were 35 big men with big muscles and lots of tattoos and big long beards, and I was thinking, have they got the right guy here? How did I get on this list? Scrawny kid from Perth, 17 years old. And 3 weeks later, we were down to 8 of us on the course. And I was at the bottom of Sydney Harbour one night. It was freezing cold. It was in winter. And I'd been in the water for 16 hours already that day with just a thin wetsuit. I was chilled to my core. And I don't pray a lot, but at that moment I prayed to someone, to anything, and I said, if you can get me out of this freezing cold water, I am really going to owe you one. And I don't lie, 5 seconds later there was a massive thump in the water, boom, and a big flash of white light. And this was my saving grace. This was a diver recall device, which is like a flare that they throw in the water. It alerts all the divers. It's only used in emergencies. So someone's been taken by a shark, someone has been killed. In a war situation, enemies are rolling in. It is serious. We'd never seen it before. I didn't care what it was. I was getting out of the cold water. I was excited. So I swam to the surface and they yelled at us. We climbed the wharf and we are running down the wharf thinking, what is coming next? Are we going to do 5,000 push-ups before we get any sleep? Are we going to run to Manly bare feet and then swim back? What have they got in store for us? What I didn't expect was to run into a small room and watch with absolute horror as the second plane flew into the Twin Towers in New York City. And one of the older soldiers said something over my shoulder which I'll never forget for the rest of my life because it changed my life, and it was simply this. Shit, men. We're going to war. And 8 hours later, I got a text message saying that I was deploying to Iraq. I could tell no one where I was going, and I had to get my gear ready fast because we were moving out that day. So that was my experience of 9/11. I'm sure all of you have experiences of that as well, and you remember potentially where you were and what was happening. I went to Iraq, and our mission was very simple. Destroy the economy of Iraq. Completely destroy their economy. And the way that you do that is you stop any oil getting out of the country. And also you stop food and medicine getting into the country. And I was in a 14-man team, most of them special forces soldiers. I had just finished my basic course, and I had turned 18 a day before I arrived in the area of operations in the war zone. And I came back from that experience with people telling me, you've done this great thing. You've fought for Australia. You're an Anzac. And I felt like I hadn't done a good thing. And I started to research and I found that 250,000 women and children died because of the sanctions that we enforced so well, my team and a Navy SEAL team from the US. And I couldn't deal with that. Remember, I'd joined the military to do good, to be a peacekeeper, and here I'd done bad, really bad. And I felt like I needed to do good for a very, very long time to right my wrongs. So I started. I was still in the military, but for the next 7 years, as I was an officer in the military going around the world on operations, I would study. I studied 2 master's degrees in international development and in international relations. And in 2007, Caitlin and I took a one-way flight to Kenya. And we arrived in Kenya ready for a life of peace, to move away from this life of war that I'd been in. And we arrived 2 days before the national elections in Kenya, which spiraled out of control. For the next 3 months, thousands of people were killed, hundreds of thousands of people were displaced, and we were right in the middle of it. We survived that experience, and then we got a call saying, hey, come down to Tanzania and run a secondary school for us. So Caitlin and I, we were 24 years old. Caitlin had just finished her graduate diploma of education and had done 3 weeks of her graduate placement in a school in Surrey Hills. So she was ready to run a school in Africa. I'd never taught before in my life, but here we were, 24 years old, about to run a school. And we take a bus down to Dar es Salaam from Nairobi, and we get picked up the next morning by an American lady. And she's going to give us a briefing about how we're going to run the school before she flies back to Washington, D.C. in about 5 hours' time. And she promises us that she'll be coming back in a few months, and she can answer any questions we have then. She tells us that the buildings are collapsing in the school. So the white ants have gone into the buildings at this school. It's right in the middle of a slum. It's for street kids. That's what the school's for. So the buildings are collapsing, so we've got to be careful which classrooms we choose. She tells us that the staff aren't really coming to school at the moment, so their attendance is 30%. And I made a joke and said, well, good on the staff for coming every now and then. And she said, yeah, but they're often coming drunk, the staff. I said, wow, what are the kids like at this school with collapsing buildings and drunk teachers occasionally turning up? And she said, oh, there's 250 kids at the school, but their attendance is also around 30%. I said, okay, is anyone getting an education in this school? Doesn't really sound like a school to me. And she goes, yeah, we've had 1 kid pass the national exams in the last 3 years, 1. Okay, there's hope. So instead of going straight to the school, which we thought we were going, we get a text message saying that one of our boys, one of the only boys who's come to school that day, has actually beaten up the only drunk teacher who's come to school that day. So the boy's in jail, the teacher's in hospital. And we get sent to the jail to get this kid out of jail and to hopefully not... He was being threatened with 6 years in jail for how much he beat up this teacher. Remember, these kids were street kids, gangsters, tough kids. So we spend 6 hours getting him out of jail, and now we're finally driving into the slum, Boko slum, where we're going to live for the next year, Caitlin and I. And it's not a nice place to drive into any time, but it's not nice at all when you're driving in at midnight for the first time and you see this East African slum in all of its sort of chaos and madness. And as we're driving in, I say to this American lady, can you please give us more information? We don't know how we're going to run this school. We're here to make a difference, but we haven't got a lot to work with. And she says, Aaron, why don't you ask this boy? And I look at this boy, his name's Lesagio. We've just spent 6 hours getting him out of jail. And he holds out his hand to me. He's got blood on his hand and blood on his face. And he says, Mr. Aaron, what would you like to know? I'm the head boy of the school and I can tell you whatever you want. So my head boy, I just spent 6 hours getting out of jail. He was my best. So Caitlin and I sat on the concrete floor of our shack, which we were going to call home for the next year. And we sat there and we said to ourselves, what on earth are we going to do here? So I'm going to throw to you. If you were me, what would you do? Talk to the person next to you. If you could be there for 1 year in that slum, as an outsider, 24 years old, what would you try to achieve in 1 year? Have a chat to the people next to you. Go for it. All right, so let's get a bit of feedback. Just throw up your hand if you want to say what you would do in a year.
Don't be shy, humans. Okay,
Yep.
over here. I'm going to pick on someone soon.
Got one here
Over here? Okay,
Yep.
cool. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
in the cream jacket.
Look at me run. Okay, what would you do?
Thank you, Aaron. It's a very tough job for 1 year, and no clue, no money, because if you want to run a school, there is huge investment you need. I know that in developing countries, there are so many NGOs are running,
Okay.
so I would like to get attention from them to run them, and of course the training also from them, come and influence the student.
Okay, cool. I'm going to bounce back to the audience one more time, Ava, so we'll get a few more in the next round. Cool. So see what some local NGOs can do, see if they can help out. You're right, we didn't have money. We knew that the staff would get a check posted to them once a month, but we didn't have budget to play with. We were pretty close to broke ourselves, Caitlin and I. We had about $300 left in the bank. So we sat there that night and we said, okay, we can try to rebuild this school physically. We can try to rebuild the staff and see if we can get a staff who actually care and don't come to school drunk. We can try to start teaching these kids and maybe get in touch with our friends on Facebook and get some library books. But we said, what is the core tragedy of this school right now? And we're making massive assumptions, of course, but we were thinking, is there something fundamentally wrong right now with this school? And we started to think, imagine you're a kid that lives in Boko. You drop out of probably primary school, you don't get into secondary school, you start working on local transport, then maybe you move into gangs, maybe you go to jail. AIDS was 2 in 5 in this community, malaria was one of the highest in Africa. If you get to your 40th birthday in Boko slum, you've had a pretty amazing life. And imagine you hear about this school down the road, an American school that if you go there you can get an education and maybe step out of poverty. And you think, this is my shot. And imagine you walk into that school and it's shit. Imagine what that would feel like. That was your last shot. Gone. So we said, we're going to bring hope back to this school. When a kid walks into this place, it will be full of hope, and if they work hard enough, they can change their life, and we're going to be alongside them every step of the way. So we started the next morning, and we worked our guts out for these kids, doing everything that we could. I'm going to fast forward 6 months. We had a library full of books. We were down to 3 staff, Caitlin, myself, and a guy called Rogers, local teacher, amazing guy. We brought attendance from 30% to about 60% at the school. The kids were learning and we felt like they were going to get through to their exams. Our goal was to get 10 kids through the exams that year and into university. That was our goal. And we felt like it was going okay. That was the good stuff. Here's the bad stuff. The mayor had threatened to, if I didn't leave this town in the next 2 weeks, he said, I'll get you out of here and it won't be pretty. The police were investigating me because they thought that I was from the CIA. I had 8 curses put on me by local witch doctors because every time I fired a drunk member of staff who wouldn't come to work, they would use their paycheck to put a curse on me from a local witch doctor. And Caitlin and I were both on our 5th bout of malaria. And that's what I look like when I've had 5 bouts of malaria. A little bit like a prisoner of war. So one afternoon, Caitlin was teaching a class of about 100 kids, and it was just towards the end of the day at this school, and we were doing everything we could for these kids, and working from 5 in the morning until midnight every single day to get 10 kids through the exams, to prove to Boko that if you come to this school, there's hope here. And I see Rogers walking past, this amazing teacher that was on our team, just the 3 of us. I said, Rogers, quick, come in for a tea. And I wanted to give him a bit of a pep talk and say, come on, we can do this together. I know it's tough, I know we're sick, I know we've got no money, but we need to work together on this. And he had been amazing, but you could tell he was maybe losing a bit of hope as well. We can't get 10 kids through the exams, Aaron, this sort of stuff. So Rogers and I, we sit down in our little house, that was our house, and the school office, everything. We lived at the school. And Rogers says to me, Aaron, you need to take a break. I said, Rogers, I didn't come here to take a break, mate. I came here to work. I came here to make a difference. And in my head, I'm thinking, I still need to do a lot of good in the world to right all the bad that I've done. And he goes, Aaron, honestly, get away from the school. Just for a couple of days. And I said, no, mate, I'm committed to these kids. This is crunch time. We've really got to work. I need you with me, please. Can we dig deep and get through this together? He said, no, Aaron, it's bad. And stop. I said, Rogers, what's up? And he goes, Aaron, I heard some of the boys talking about you in the slum this afternoon. I said, great. What were the boys saying about me? He goes, Aaron, it's bad. Because in a few hours' time, the boys from our school are going to come to your house, and in front of Caitlin, they're going to kill you. So again, chat to the person next to you. What would you do if you're 24-year-old Aaron in that situation? And I'm going to take off the option of running. Go.
1 minute. Oh, what would you do? What would you do? Swim, don't run.
Start loading guns.
Who's going to be brave? Who had an answer?
What would you do if you were me? Yeah, let's go here.
Where? Who? What? You? Ah,
Next
yes.
to the blue laptop, yeah.
It's gonna be a bit funny though, as you took the runaway option. So first thing you'll do is you'll tell your partner to just stick with it, just be brave. And what I'm gonna do is before they come to me, I'll actually gonna go to them and
Kill them.
sort things up. Yeah, not kill them.
That's group brainstorming there, that's nice.
Yeah. The other option over here was, well, he was a diver, he should swim away.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what I did. I said, Rogers, the boys are going to come out of class in about 2 minutes' time. Caitlin's going to come out of class with them. I want you to make Caitlin a cup of tea and tell her that you want to have a meeting with her. So the bell did ring a few minutes later, and all the students start streaming out of class, and I said, Msangi, he's one of the older boys, get as many of the boys together as you can before they leave school in this classroom. And I went and I sat in that classroom, and I didn't know what my next move was. And Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher, says the one who has a why to live by can bear almost any how. I'll say that again. The one who has a why to live by can bear almost any how. I take it a step further and I say your why should make you cry. You should care so much about the thing that you're fighting for that it actually brings tears to your eyes when you really think about it. And if you don't have that level of passion for the work that you're doing the wrong thing. But the why for me, in that place, it was those kids. And now they wanted me dead. That is absolute failure as a leader. Absolute failure. In the military, I was the officer that people wanted to be in my team because I looked after them and really worked with them. But here I was in this other place that I didn't understand, and people didn't like me. In fact, they hated me so much they wanted me dead. And I felt like, you know what, maybe I just give up. I moved back to Sydney. I had an apartment looking over the Opera House. I'll be having a latte and a croissant in a week in Kirribilli. It's going to be great. Just head back. But then I thought I'll give it one last shot. And all the boys came in to the room. There was about 60 of them in the room. And I say boys, but many of them were my age and they were tough, really tough. And we walk in and I say, Msangi, can you latch the door shut? So we're all in there together, 60 of us. And I stood in front of them and I said, the rumor is that you want to kill me tonight. Well, I don't want Caitlin to see it happen, so do it right now. And thank Christ none of them moved. But I challenged them again and I said, we talk about being men of courage and men of honor. Let's do this thing. We don't just gossip about this stuff, we do it. Let's finish this thing right now. And I was going to go down with a fight. And I was angry and I expected them to come at me. But they still didn't. And at that moment, all of my ideas, all of my essays and master's degrees, all of my feelings that I could go to a place like Boko Slum as a kid from New Zealand and go and make a difference as an outsider, I threw it all in the bin. And I said, I'm sorry. I've failed you so badly, and I'm so, so sorry. Now I'm going to give you the chalk, and I want you to tell me everything I've done wrong that makes you so angry that some of you in this room want me dead. And for the next 3 hours, they did. Told me everything I'd done wrong. And the core of it was this: Aaron, it's your vision, not our vision. You're trying to get 10 of us through the exams, you're trying to fix this place, but it's all about you. Where's our say in this? I said, cool. If you fail this school, you know what your future looks like. All I'm saying is you've got Caitlin, myself, and Rogers, and we will do anything we can for you. So what do you want us to do? What is your vision now for this school? And they rewrote the vision for the school that day. Caitlin did exactly the same thing with the girls later that day as well. A few days later, we were at a funeral. And it was the third funeral we'd been to in 3 days, all for kids under 10, all of them in coffins because of AIDS. And I looked at this one kid who was watching his best friend be buried, and I realized, man, I had it so wrong. That week, the lesson that I'd learned, which I use in everything I do now, was the only thing more powerful than ownership is authorship. Say that again. The only thing more powerful than ownership is authorship. You can't just say, this is my plan, I'm the boss, hand it across to people and say, come on, let's do this thing. Let them write the plan, and then they will own it. And as I looked at this kid at this funeral, I knew that change was never going to come from me in Boko Slum. Change had to come from that kid. Change had to come from the mourners at that funeral. Change had to come from the people who wanted change more than I could ever want change in Boko Slum. And Caitlin and I excused ourselves from this funeral, and we walked home to our little shack in the slum, and we said, what if an organisation existed in the world that went into the toughest places on the planet, found incredible local leaders, and backed them for once? And we wrote and wrote and wrote, and we talked, and we said, what if we could do it? Is it out there? We don't even know. After that, we moved to Kenya to run a HIV orphanage. Actually, I won't say that we ran it. We went there, and we worked alongside the team that ran it, a bunch of incredible Kenyans. We then went to Cambridge University for a year, where I did a master's, but I spent 5% of my time writing my thesis and 95% of my time working on what was going to be Spark International, an organisation that would back startup entrepreneurs in really, really tough communities around the world. And then we launched. We moved back to Australia. We had about $500 between us, a backpack of clothes that we were sharing, and we stayed on a friend's couch and we got to work building Spark International, an organisation that would back startup entrepreneurs in really tough places. And I had 3 master's degrees at that point. Caitlin had 2. And for the first 18 months of running Spark, I pulled beers at the Opera Bar, and Caitlin was a nanny for a rich couple in Paddington for their little girl, even though we had 7 degrees between us, even though I had been earning $140,000 a year before. And a guy that was drinking at the Opera Bar, he said to me, "Are you from England?" And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm from New Zealand, but I've just been living in England." He said, "Oh, where were you?" I said, "Oh, Cambridge." And he goes, "Oh, you're probably serving the posh students at Cambridge, probably serving beers for them too." And I said, "I was, to pay my way through university, but actually I was lucky enough to be a student at Cambridge." And he says, what on earth is a Cambridge grad doing pouring me my beer?" And I said, "Oh, thanks for asking. I'm launching this thing called Spark. It's going to change the world. It's going to be amazing." And this old man started crying. And he gave me a $50 note, and he said, you know what, I've wasted my life, but you're not wasting yours. Keep going. And we built Spark. We started with 5 entrepreneurs in Papua New Guinea with nothing. And we now back 150 entrepreneurs across Kenya, South Africa. We're launching here in Australia, and also we're launching India. And those entrepreneurs have given 52,439 people so far a better house, a better job, better education, or better health. So that's what we've built so far. I want to give you my quick tips here as an entrepreneur. So for me, if you don't love what you're doing, stop it, because it's really bloody hard. So really, really focus on what you care about and tap into your passion. Listen to lots of people and then move. So when I was at Cambridge University, 100 different people told me 100 different solutions as to what I should do with Spark International. And I then went and talked to people in Kenya, and I talked to people in Tanzania, and I talked to all sorts of people and said, what do you think we should do? And after all that listening, we said, thank you very much. And then we did this, and then we made a decision and we moved. And you know what? It all changed in the first week anyway. So listen to people and then make a decision. This is a challenge for every single one of you in this room. Your apprenticeship is finished. After this course, there's no more training programs, accelerators, incubators that you need to go through before you then start your venture. Start it now. Your apprenticeship's finished. You will learn more in the first week of running your venture than you will ever learn in a course or a program, guaranteed. And apologies to the university staff here. Don't raise money, make money. So there's 2 sides to this. I don't think that you should launch your venture as a non-profit, as a charity. You're smarter than that, and you can think of better ways to raise revenue through your ventures. What I did is I launched Spark International, and at the same time I launched an education company. So Spark International is a growing organization that's doing a lot of really important work around the world, but my company has invoiced $2 million already this year. And I own 50% of that. And our profit margins are really, really high. So I am running a social enterprise, but I'm doing really nicely financially because I've figured out how to make money while I'm doing what I want to do. So don't raise money in fundraising, make it. Also, don't raise money through investment and debt. It's always a badge of honor for someone starting a company. Like, oh, we've just raised $500,000. I say, big deal. If you tell me you've just done $1 million in revenue, then I want to talk to you. So don't raise money, make money. Get into bed with people all the time. So we've just merged Spark International with an organization called YGAP. Spark International, we're getting amazing results on the ground, really, really cheap in Africa. And YGAP in Melbourne, we're getting incredible results from fundraising programs. So we said, you're good at that, we're good at this, let's get together. We used to live in Sydney. We used to work in the same office as Avis. But we moved down to Melbourne to merge our organization with a group called YGAP. So right now we've changed the lives of 50,000 people living in extreme poverty. Our goal now, together with YGAP, is to back 1,000 entrepreneurs in 3 years that change the lives of 1 million people living in poverty. That's the power of getting into bed with people. By the way, we're running a campaign this month called 5 Cent. We're trying to collect every 5 cent piece in Australia. There's boxes and posters down here. If you're interested, please take them, set them up in your office. If you want to come have a chat, we'd love to get some people getting this into Sydney. It's everywhere in Melbourne, but we'd love to get it here. Solve problems for people. The amount of times people come to me, because we also incubate startups in Australia as well, education startups, people say, I've got a solution now, it's going to be amazing. I say, stop. What problem are you solving? Entrepreneurs that fail, the entrepreneurs that just go, poof, here's my idea, it's going to be great. Entrepreneurs that succeed are the people who solve problems for people. Think big, think new, and think again. How can a bunch of people in a small office in Melbourne change the lives of 1 million people in 3 years? We are absolutely going to do it. Absolutely, we're on track to achieve it. So think big, think new, and think again. Don't settle for playing small. And the final one is maintain your mojo. You'll get tired, you will freak out, you'll have anxiety, you won't be able to sleep, all these sorts of things as you're building your venture. Maintain your mojo though. Look after yourself, meditate, eat well, have friends around you, because you absolutely need that. So, I'm just looking at time. You've been doing pitching today. So the absolute tool that you need in your belt as an entrepreneur is your pitch. So to finish up with, I'll pitch Spark to you in 60 seconds. Before I do that, I'll tell you what happened in that school in Tanzania. So at the end of the year, we had an incredible farm that was feeding the kids every single day. We had attendance at 80% at the school, in a school where there was 20% attendance before. We had a library full of books. We had an incredible staff of local teachers who were absolutely running that school. And 14 of our kids got through the national exams that year and into university. The oldest is now a lawyer, the second oldest is an architect, and we chat with them on Facebook all the time. And I promise you that I learned more from a ragtag bunch of East African street kids than I learned in the 3 master's degrees that I did, including the one at Cambridge. So that was where we built Spark International. So I will pitch Spark to you in my final 60 seconds, and then we'll finish up there. So I'm sure many of you have heard that 1.2 billion people live in extreme poverty, which means they will go to bed tonight hungry. But what you might not have heard is this. In the last 50 years, $1 trillion of foreign aid has gone from the US, Europe, and Australia to Africa. In the same period, poverty's got worse. Outside ideas are not working for Africa. At Spark, we do things very differently. We believe in the power of local leaders with local solutions to local challenges, and we find and back these amazing startup entrepreneurs in their communities. We accelerate them. They all come together and they live together for a week. We back them for 3 years, giving them funding and professional support. And then we connect them to the impact investors to grow their ventures. Does it work? Absolutely. 149 entrepreneurs that have brought more than 50,000 people out of poverty. We are not the heroes for Africa, but I know who they are, and I want to introduce you to them. Visit sparkinternational.org, find your hero, and let's work together to change the world.